Okay, I think we could start class. I got a lot to go through. I neglected to mention last week. Um, I want to thank the elders of the congregation here for giving me the opportunity to do this. I understand there were several applicants when this topic came up, almost 9 months ago or so, and I was selected to do this. So I feel honored to be able to teach this to you. So I wanted to say that. Let's start class with a word of prayer. Our God and our Father in heaven, we thank you for this time that we have this morning to look at a subject that is very needed in this world today, and that is to focus on you, Father, and the evidence that you've left for us that you indeed exist. And Father, we pray that we may be able to understand this, be able to relay this to others who don't believe, and do it in a meaningful way, Father, and plant the seed that you could work on these individuals, and it will be to your glory. These things we ask, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. We talked a little bit last week about just setting the stage, about faith and knowledge and unbelief, what causes the types of unbelief, and what causes unbelief in general. This morning we're going to get into the heart of some of these evidences, and this is a very important one, the most important one, I believe, in the case for the existence of God. I quote Psalms 46:10, "Be still and know, be certain that there is a God." God indeed left us with evidence that he does exist. Can we prove the existence of God to an unbeliever? The nature of the proof is not what science would call empirical evidence. That's evidence using your five senses. I can't take you to, for instance, the Pacific Ocean like I could and say, there's the ocean, take you to God and say, there's God. We prove by the way of prima facie evidence. Now, that evidence is there is no other way but evidence. And interesting thing about that type of evidence, it's legal. If there is a case where it can be shown that say a criminal act occurred, and there is no other way it could have occurred but this way, then that person can be convicted in a court of law, even though nobody saw it, nobody heard it. There is no direct empirical evidence. That person can be convicted, and that's called prima facie evidence. And why can't God be proved that way? Because God is spirit. That's John 4:24. In the scientific field of knowledge or logic, law of rationality, it states this: one should accept as true only those conclusions for which there is adequate evidence. The prima facie evidence arrived at through logic, clear reasoning, and factual data is adequate to establish the conclusion that God exists. Here are the proofs that have been used for years and years for establishing. Now, there's other proofs out there, but these are the ones specific for God the Father. The law of cause and effect. It's a scientific, I give you the scientific field, it's physics, it's cosmological argument. Intelligent design, it's in the field of logic, it's called teleological argument. Existence of morality, it's in the field also of logic, anthropological argument. Man's inherent recognition of God. God put in his image recognition of himself and a yearning for him. And there is a very interesting debate between Alexander Campbell and Robert Owen back in 1829 that reveals this. The origin of life, that is in the fields of mathematics and biology, and the Bible, all scientific fields. We're going to look at this a little more deeply next week and the week after. But all of these are irrefutable, which is interesting. Those who claim that evolution is true and there is no God and so on and so forth. You look at these, and I've heard debates. There's one that a recent one that I heard from Kyle Butt and Blair Scott. When Blair got up and talked, he avoided every one of those issues, every one of them. He couldn't answer any of them. And you get and he's an atheist, and it's just interesting to listen. They dodge around, they bring up other subjects, but they cannot address these issues. Okay, I highlighted the first two because I think that's probably all we're going to get through this morning, believe it or not. If we can, we'll try to get the rest of them, but there's a lot in these first two that I want to go over. And this is the law of cause and effect. In this model that science has is an effect. Simply, in fact, there must be an added cause. Didn't turn the river muddy, wasn't adequate. The landslide down the way up the river could have. It was adequate. A fly jumping on the edge of a book close to the corner of a table didn't topple the book, wasn't adequate. Okay, that's where this law is coming into. Evolutionist Robert Jastrow once stated, the universe and everything that has happened to it since the beginning of time are a grand effect without a known cause. Doesn't believe in God. As scientists, what are we to make of this? He doesn't know. There are three options to explain what caused this universe. You can think of another one, you let me know. The universe is either eternal, always been here, always will be here, didn't have a beginning, is not going to have an end. The universe created itself out of absolutely nothing, or the universe was created by someone or something greater than, outside of the universe, and before the universe existed. Okay, let's look at each one of these. Universe is eternal. This is the ideal. I think you can read that okay, can't you? I put that in a font. That's the lowest I'll go on the size of the font. The ideal position for the evolutionist is this one. Is to assert that the universe is eternal. By so doing, they avoid problems associated with there having been a beginning as well as a first cause uncaused. Think about that. I mean, the Big Bang, that was something that they had to come up with. They theorized that. It is still something, and it's taking a lot of heat right now. I don't know if you've followed it. There's a publication by Apologetics Press in their Reason and Revelation periodical that just came out. I think it was last month. The Big Bang is in real trouble. Okay, they are finding things out that discredit that in a big way. What do they have in the background to take its place? Right now, they're trying to think something up. They don't have anything. So that's where they would love to have this theory here, the universe being eternal, to be a fact. They don't have to worry about it. So why haven't they taken this position? There's a law, there's another scientific law. Don't let the word scare you. There's the second law of thermodynamics. And that law says that it's a law of increase or randomness in nature. All nature is running down. All systems are to a non-useful state. Put it in layman's terms, we're growing older, cars rust, fuels are being used up. It's a one-way street. It's going from useful to not. That is the second law of thermodynamics. Versus in process of running down, it cannot be eternal. Otherwise, it would have already run down. You think about it. This law points to a beginning when all energy was available for a complete order when complete order prevailed and is moving toward an end when all energy will be spent and complete disorder will ensue. Arthur Eddington, evolutionist and a British astronomer, made this statement, if I can read it. If our views are right, somewhere between the beginning of time and the present, we must place the winding up of the universe. When that occurred and who, he put the capital W on there, interestingly, or what wound up the universe were questions that bemused physicists and astronomers. Only as a result of the most recent discoveries can we say that with a fair degree of confidence that the world has not existed forever, that it began abruptly without apparent cause. In other words, I don't believe in God. In a blinding event, thinking probably Big Bang, that defies scientific explanation. What most recent discoveries is he talking about that discredits an eternal universe? Astronomers observe what's called a redshift, or expansion of celestial bodies away. Okay, if eternal, this cannot be happening. You cannot have an expansion taking place and have an eternal universe scientifically. Therefore, the universe is not eternal. Not to get into more of that, but I mean, that is the simple explanation of it. And they're not fighting it. If you think about it, science dates, albeit every 20 to 40 years they redate because they change their mind about the date of the Earth and the date of the universe, but they do date it as a start point. Isaiah 51:6 and Hebrews 1:11 state that the earth will wear out like a garment. God tells us this is going to happen. It confirms this law. Let's look at the second one. Universe created itself out of nothing. What would appear to be a redundant statement in all manner of logic and reason has been taken seriously by science, evolutionary science, for it suggests a natural beginning. By the way, this is also taught as fact in your public schools today. This was preceded, this Big Bang was preceded, I threw this in just to give you an idea of what they were thinking prior to that. Sir Fred Hoyle thought of this expansion that he saw and something from nothing. He suggested there were points in the universe where matter was being created from absolutely nothing in various spots, spontaneously, in mainly hydrogen. And when asked about it, he made the statement, it would be meaningless, and I said, no, I haven't a clue why this would be. So in other words, science cannot come up with an answer for it. And there's option 2 still, first law, go to the first law of thermodynamics, conservation of energy and matter. And neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed in nature, but only conserved. You might think, well, you burn wood or you destroy it. No, you turn it into heat energy. It always maintains in some form of energy in the universe. God's word argues against this idea. Genesis 2:1, the creation. God created, it was a miracle. God spoke this universe into existence. But he said in that passage that's finished, there will not be any more creation from nothing. I've done it. And that's it. And that says in nature. So in other words, in natural processes, you cannot create from nothing or destroy in nature. The field of mathematics argues against it. Learned this in grade school. 0 + 0 = 0. Therefore, both logically and scientifically, the universe did not create itself out of nothing. What does that leave? That leaves option 3. The universe was created by something or something or someone greater than or outside of the universe, a first cause. had to be of a different nature than the finite matter contained in the universe, implying a creator, implying God. Here's a corollary argument, just to make you think here. If there had ever been a time when absolutely nothing existed, there would be nothing now. You think back, if there was anything, how could there be anything now? Since something now exists, it follows that something has existed forever. Okay? Consider the following. Everything that exists is either mind or matter / energy. Something exists now, so something eternal exists. Otherwise, there would be nothing now. Therefore, either mind or matter is eternal. We've just disproved the fact that matter is eternal. That means mind is eternal. And creationists call that mind God. Okay, these arguments have not been addressed by the other side, as it were. And there, any argument they bring up, well, we'll figure it out later. It's something that we don't quite understand, but they'll still hold to something coming from absolutely nothing. I've always, when someone says they believe in evolution, I always come back to this argument. How can you get something from absolutely nothing? Well, the Big Bang. No, what was the Big Bang? What blew up? Well, you just get to back it up a little bit more. Intelligent design. This is what's called the teleological argument. It goes like this. If the universe evinces purposeful design, there must have been a designer. The universe does, therefore there is. Let's see, purposeful design evident in our world. Which is there purposeful design? This is a quote from Romans. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood, what has been made, so that they are without excuse. And they've been clearly seen back when Paul wrote this, and they're clearly seen today. Ken and I talked about this a little bit after class last week. And the people in the first century, they had to wonder about everything. If you think about it, the grass is green. I don't know why. The sky is blue, the stars in the sky. God took Abraham out. That was one of his, to show him his glory with all he pointed out that his descendants will be as the stars and numerous as the stars in the sky. These things were a puzzle to all those people. There's no reason not to believe there's a higher power. And we think we know everything today, but we don't. Even the human body, we think we've mapped everything out and so on and so forth, but we haven't. And we could get into that a little bit, but God is clearly seen. You have to deny him. Does our solar system exhibit it? Do plants and animals exhibit it? And does our body exhibit it? I thought we would look briefly at what does it take to detect. For one person, well, that shows design. Another person, well, that shows design. And there could be some confusion as to what mandates intelligent design. And I thought this would be a good exercise to kind of go through and do this. We detect intelligent design all the time. You see this written in the clouds. Okay. Do you think that the clouds themselves, with wind and so on and so forth, formed those words? You don't. The same thing with Mount Rushmore. You think rain and those on that map. You know a designer was, you don't know who the designer was or exactly how that came about. We recognize that. Okay. For an object or organism to be considered a product of intelligent design as opposed to natural processes, it must meet one of several criteria. Now, I apologize, this is scientific criteria, but if you're going to talk to people, they're going to pull you here. They're going to ask the question, Well, yeah, it may show a design to you, but not to me. Well, this kind of information is such that you could bring out to them. It must exhibit what's called specified complexity, an order of complexity beyond what might be derived by chance or external specification. And I'll show you in a minute some examples of that. Or, and this could be an and or, organic subjects must exhibit high information content, the ability to store, replicate, or act on complex. And finally, exhibit irreducible complexity. In other words, all the parts have to be there in order for it to work properly. Okay, this is intelligent design in our universe. Does our universe operate? In fact, our universe does operate on precise mathematical calculations. The probability of all these calculations occurring by chance, if we did it in Tramos nil, that it was by chance. Therefore, an outside specification is demanded. And I'll just real quickly, these are ones that you've probably heard in the past. Earth's orbit around the sun varies by 1/9 of an inch every 18 miles. That's how precise it is. Why is it that way? Well, if the Earth was a little bit closer, it would raise havoc. A little bit farther, we would freeze in places. Earth's tilt, 23.5 degrees. Why is that important? Well, all of our oceans would pool to one side. God has created this universe and these relationships between our planet and these other entities just so. Distance from the moon, 240,000 miles, is just perfect. You go 25,000 miles closer or farther away, the tides go crazy on this planet. And here's a passage in the Bible that verifies that God is controlling this, and He, the Son, is the radiance of His glory in the exact representation of this nature, and upholds all things by the word of His power. Hebrews 1:3. God is controlling this and maintaining this exactness of the universe. All right, here's a different subject here. This is detecting from SETI. Okay, this is radio telescope. This is a program that was really came in vogue a few years back. Search for extra ET. And this program would be pointless if you think about it if we couldn't understand what the signal was, whether it was intelligent or not, coming from outer space. The criterion set for the signal as proof of intelligence is specified complexity for this system. Were the signal received showing any mathematical formulas, any language, anything put together of that complexity, scientists would say we've got a signal from some intelligent being out there. To date, we have not. Only radio noise. We've had some order. We've had some pulsars that give us repetitive signals showing order, but not complexity. This is a trilobite. It is a crustacean from, well, science dates this 600 million years old. This creature crawled on the ocean floor. It has an eye. The eye of the trilobite, a supposedly primitive invertebrate of what they call the Cambrian period, possessed what has been called the most sophisticated eye lens ever produced in nature. Unlike the human eye, this eye was composed of both organic and inorganic materials, calcite and chitin, I can't pronounce that word, separated by precise mathematical shape boundaries, and utilize a double lens of up to 15,000 lenses per eye, allowing for perfect focus from any distance under the ocean. All components were essential for sight. Okay, second, detecting intelligent design, high information content. Okay, biological systems show high information content. if they exhibit the capability to store, replicate, or act on that replication. DNA, you hear a lot about DNA. A pinhead's quantity of DNA, the information that it can store, equals the amount of information that you can put in full volumes of books reaching from the Earth to the Moon 500 times. That's how much information can be stored in DNA. Replicating, this is a creationist, Werner Gitt. He made the statement that DNA is structured in such a way that it can be replicated every time a cell divides in two. The replication is so precise, it can be compared to 280 clerks copying the entire Bible sequentially. That means one after the other, not all from an original. So it's much more likely there would be an error. Each one from the previous one, with at most a single letter being transposed incorrectly. And that's not a for sure, that's just a possibility that there would be one out of all that process. And then high information content, the function portion of it. Wilder Smith stated DNA's coded information may be compared to a book or video with an extra factor coded in to enable the genetic information to read itself and then exercise the information it reads. He compares this to an architect's plan of a house, which when thrown into the garden will build itself entirely on its own initiative without the need of any further instruction from contractors or outside agents. These things are within our body. We have genes that do this. They not only form, but they they have blueprints, and then they act on their own blueprints. And that all shows intelligent design. It cannot but show intelligent design. Third one, irreducible complexity. A third way to detect is intelligent design is this, irreducible complexity, and it's to look at nature as a machine, if you will, requiring all components to be there at one time. In other words, not to have it a removal of a portion of it, or in case of evolution, a slow arrival of a piece won't work. You have to have it all there. Easiest example would be a mousetrap. You can't have a mousetrap unless you have all the components. The spring, the bar, the platform. If you're missing one of them, you don't have a mousetrap anymore. That's called irreducible complexity. Same thing with human blood clotting. If you don't have all the components at once, you're not going to clot the blood chemically. It takes everything working together at one time. And that's a big argument against evolution. You can't slowly develop a blood clotting system in the human body. It's an error. It's not the body choosing this and then choosing that and then choosing that. No, it's got to all be there. God had to create. He had to do it all at once. This is an interesting, though it's a nasty bacteria. It's E. coli, and it shows irreducible complexity. That's a diagram on the left, and those are actual pictures on the right. Throw these back down there. But this bacteria has what amounts to, it's like an outboard motor. It has a rotor. It has all the rings. It has a propeller. Science cannot explain this in any way, shape, or form, how this could have developed or why it is. And this is one of the proofs that the design movement a few years ago, intelligent design movement, used to try to get this taught in the public schools. They pointed to this and said, higher power. Now they did, again, as I said last week, they didn't say that, or go as far as to say that the God in the Bible is the higher power, but they had to admit that there was a higher power to design this. There's no way it could have occurred by natural processes. and the courts knocked it down. They just, I even have an article from back in 2005 where they tried to introduce this in Illinois, and the court said no, it's creationism, it's religion being disguised here, and so we can't let it in. It's just so. Anyway, that's an example of that. Here's another one that's interesting. This is called the bombardier beetle. It shows irreducible complexity. This little beetle produces two chemicals, hydroquinone and hydrogen peroxide. It stores it on either side of its body, and it has an inhibitor or a neutralizer. These are very volatile chemicals that it has. When it's threatened with a large, like a spider or something much larger than itself, this beetle puts those two chemicals together, and it starts a reaction, and it goes up to boiling in less than a second. And then it has two specially designed pipes, as it were, that it can point at the aggressor and explode into, towards in that direction and get away. And there's no conceivable way that this beetle could have evolved. All of those components in there, there's just no answer for it. But a lot of people don't know that exists out there, but it does. And it's just, I think God's, it just shows some of the amazing design out there of his creation. Here's another one. It's called a decoy fish. It uses a dorsal fin to simulate a smaller fish, complete with mouth and eye. When it spots lunch, it raises its lure and ceases gill movement. It stops breathing and then colors the lure. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's this, if I can see it right there, is the lure. And there's the eye, there's the mouth. It also disconnects itself from what looks to be the lure by discoloring and causing a separation between its body and its dorsal fin. It makes it almost translucent. And then it waves it back and forth, which opens and closes the mouth of the dorsal, what appears to be a bait fish. And then the other moves closer, and then launch. It's just amazing. And it shows irreducible. It had to all be there at one time. It couldn't have slowly developed, and it also shows specified complexity. And I only have one slide on the human body. It just there's if you haven't seen this, this is a DVD. It's called Unlocking the Mystery of Life. And this is from the fellows that started, I believe, the intelligent design movement. Stephen Myers are one of the scientists here, but it shows that bacteria, that E. coli bacteria, and also shows in depth the human body and a lot of components in the human body and how they. It's very good to take a look at. To explain, but this is just some of the features of the human body. The ear, 2,500 tones that we recognize at a minimum. The eye is self-cleaning, self-repairing. Filters 1.5 million messages at one point, at one time. Our bones are the strongest material to weight known to exist. Our muscles are both voluntary and involuntary. Our brain has been described as the most complex organized matter in the universe. Something that's interesting about the brain is if you're injured, your brain will take over and direct all of your blood to the right organs to keep you alive all on its own. It's just, it's amazing. So God has created us in such a way, and our skin is the most efficient heating and cooling system known to exist. In our DNA and RNA, each cell is a blueprint of our entire body, and all of our genes, all of our inside of our body communicate chemically with each other, and they store a vast amount of information, and it's unparalleled in its complexity. And it's that statement in Psalms is an understatement. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay, I've been rattling on and on and on about design. I don't know if you have any questions or anything about it, but again, the cause and effect argument and the design argument are two of the strongest ones out there. The fact that you take something like this that even science can't argue with. They say, well, that bacteria could not have, that beetle have evolved. You try to teach it to your kids in a public school, courts step in and say, religion, can't do it. But they'll allow evolution to be taught. And evolution is nothing more than a religion, in my view. There's a lot of assumptions in that and a lot of unproven things in there, but they'll allow that because it's science says that that's not religion. Okay, that's true science, and it's a fact. Okay, here's admissions by some of the evolutionists on what we just saw. This is by David Dreamer. It is now quite clear that the bacteria flagellum actually rotates as a rigid helical structure, driven by a rotor motor, requiring a rotor, a stator, a rotary bearing, originally considered highly unlikely and certainly without precedent in the biological world. Okay, that's his statement. Here's one by Ricardo Seti. That the refracting interface between the two lens elements in a trilobite's eye was designed in accordance with optical constructs worked out by Descartes and the other one there in the mid-17th century borders on science fiction. These lenses from the trilobite, technically termed aspheric and Atlantic lenses, optimize both light collecting and image formation better than any lens ever conceived. These trilobites hit upon the best possible lens design. Best possible lens design that optical physics has ever been able to produce. I underlined that one part there. They hit upon it by accident, is what he's saying there. God didn't create that. They just kept going trial and error till they hit upon the best possible. And what's really ironic about this is that that particular creature was at the beginning. That was 600 million years ago, and evolution is supposed to be going forward. It's supposed to be evolving better and better things, yet the most sophisticated eye ever produced and still is occurred back then. We've only got 5 minutes. Let's just jump into this a little bit. Why do humans possess a sense of right and wrong? Do we not recognize such things as lying and stealing and killing as inherently wrong? Where did this come from? Have we evolved morals out of a need for preservation, for instance? Or were we in fact created out of the image of God? George Simpson, famed evolutionist and atheist, made this statement. Although man is the result of purposeless process, good and evil, right and wrong, concepts irrelevant in nature, arise only in man. Why only in man and not in animals? Do dogs show remorse after stealing a bone? Here's man's ideas concerning morals and ethics. Relativism. There is no universal objective system to determine morals. All values or systems are culturally derived and equal. And man's come up with this one. Utilitarianism. Good is that which ultimately gives the greatest amount of pleasure to the greatest number of people. That's that idea of morals. Situationalism. Something is right because an individual determines it's right. It's on a case-by-case basis. And this is an evolutionary concept, determinism. Man is not responsible for his actions. Man has been programmed by his genetics to act as he does. He has no control. So that's man's answers to why we have morals. Okay. Great. Right. But I mean, if you don't believe in God and and morals and ethics demand that, where did that come from? And again, Simpson said that, they arise only in man. He scratches his head. He doesn't explain it. And the obvious answer is, God created that in us, in man, only in man. And you have to account for that. And, where did that come from? Well, these are what, what man has come back with and said, well, we can't explain the other. And if there is no God, then these are, why our morals and ethics took place or whatever, right or wrong. Good is utilitarianism. Good is the most pleasure for the most people. That's good, period. Bad is the worst thing for a number of people. That's bad, and that's what they believe. Yeah, yeah. These are recent. These are more recent developments that came up with this. But I mean, as time goes on, even in this country, God is being more and more attacked, and these things are coming more and more in vogue. Morality demands a morals giver. He showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth Jehovah require of thee, but to do justly, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with thy God. It's in Micah 6:8. Is he? Were you done, Carl? Right. Yeah. All right. Listen, I appreciate your attention. Next week we'll get into another subject. Thank you.